Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Unstoppable Dad Project. Thanks again for joining me here for another week. If you're new to the podcast, welcome. I appreciate you taking the time out of your week to listen to this 15-20 minute podcast that I have going on here, diving into my life as a dad, my life as a father, and my life as a coach. And on this podcast, I hope that I am able to give you an insight into some of the struggles that I face daily, some of the struggles that the people I've been lucky enough to coach have struggled with in order to implement habit change so that you can become the absolute most unstoppable version of yourself, so that you can be the role model and the superhero and the unstoppable dad that you want to be for your family. Now, before I get into today's podcast, I just have a couple of favors that I need you to do for me. If you are finding some value out of this podcast, please make sure you share it with your friends. By you sharing it around, you'll help the podcast continue to grow. I've seen remarkable growth with the podcast over the last couple of years, and I appreciate those of you that have listened, but without you continuing to share it around, the podcast won't grow, and then not sure where it would be. But also make sure you're subscribed on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. And if you are able to, please leave us a 5-star review. Now, this week, I want to talk about the concept of I am trying to versus I am or I don't. And what I mean by that is, whenever we're looking to change and we're making a change within our life, let's say it's something like we want to live healthier. Maybe we want to quit something. We want to quit drinking. If we smoke, we want to quit smoking. Something along those lines. And it's a concept around actually creating a new identity for yourself around that is somebody who does those things or who does the habits that you need to take in order to fulfill that goal. So let's use an example, right? Let's use a smoking example because this is a bit of an easier one to quantify. So say, for example, we've got 3 people at a bar or at a barbecue or whatever the case might be. One person is smoking and the other 2 are going through different stages of quitting. The person who's smoking offers a cigarette to the other 2 people. One person replies with, "No, thank you, I'm trying to smoke." The other person replies with, "I don't smoke." Now, let's say for the sake of this story, both those people are the same amount of time has elapsed since they've both had their last cigarette. And they've both essentially achieved the same result in that instance, right? Where they have both not taken a cigarette. They've both continued on their journey to quit the habit that they want, the negative behavior that they want to get out of their life. And so from outside looking in, you would think that they've achieved the same result, which is great. However, what I've seen and what I've read and what I've noticed is the chances of the person who has said, "I am trying to," versus the person who said, "I don't," the chances of them relapsing, so going back to smoking cigarettes at some point, is potentially a lot higher than the other person. And the main reason is, even though from the outside looking in, they have essentially achieved the same result, one person identifies as somebody who doesn't smoke. The other person hasn't quite stepped into that reality because because of the verbiage they are using and because of the way they have communicated that, they are trying. Now, when it comes to creating a new habit and identity, one exercise that I have noticed has worked for a lot of people, especially ones that are really, really struggling to implement long-term habit change, is actually sitting down and thinking about almost creating another person, creating this new avatar for yourself around what you want to achieve. So let's say you want to be healthier. What does that person who is healthier look like to you? What habits do they do? And I mean, yes, we can go into aesthetic-based things. They have this going on and that going on. But more importantly, like, what habits do they do? How many times a week do they work out? How many hours a night do they sleep? How much water do they drink? What are their relationships like? How much time do they spend with their family? All these little quantifiable things, like what are those habits that go into becoming that person? And then from there, identifying yourself as that person. So let's use working out for an example, because it's something that I've helped hundreds, thousands of people with over the last 15 plus years. Simply identifying yourself as someone who works out compared to I'm trying to work out more can sometimes be the switch that needs to be flicked in order to step over that hump of inconsistency when it comes to working out. You are somebody who works out rather than you're trying to work out more. Now, I'm not saying this as some secret, if you say it, it'll manifest itself into reality. It's not that at all, because actually implementing those behaviors are hard. Like, you still have to take the action. Simply saying that you work out, I'm someone who works out more, but then not actually showing up and not doing the work is not going to achieve the result. And in fact, it's actually going to work in the other direction for you, because you're going to be telling yourself one thing, but then you're not going to be following through on the action. And that, in turn, is going to create a whole bunch of other problems that is really going to set you down a very, very negative path that is really not in the best interests of your mental health, physical health, and overall well-being. So we have to, by doing this and saying this and identifying as this, we need to also follow through on our word and understand that we need to do those habits in order to build up confidence for ourselves. And then by building confidence up for ourselves, we can then start to step into this new identity that we've created. And that can be such an important part mentally of creating new habit change and creating a new lifestyle for yourself that you want and you want to achieve. Now, there's potentially going to be, as you go through this journey, if you are starting out, you may have ideal world goals and aspirations. And for some people, when we embrace that reality, we're able to step into it. And over a 6-month, 12-month period of following through on the things that we said to ourselves, we become this new person. And there's other times where you may not quite hit exactly what you need to. And you may have to maybe massage that new identity and create different expectations. But by doing that, you've still moved closer to who you want to be and this new identity you're trying to create. But realistically, one of the biggest things and the biggest changes I see in people when they do create this new identity and they identify with this, when things don't quite go to plan, or they have a bad week, or they have an off week, they then are able to step back into those actions, habits, and behaviors much easier, because to them, internally, this is who they identify as. It is not this far out there goal that seems very unachievable. It is who they are, and from there, they can just go back to it. They can go back to the gym without having massive mental hurdles to jump over. Now, this is, it probably, you may be listening to this and go, well, that seems easy enough, but that's not the reality of it. And you're right, it's not the reality of it. And it's not something that is just, I'm going to write down this new identity on a piece of paper, and these are the habits I'm going to do, and within a week, I am going to be this new person. It's not going to work like that. There are going to be ebbs and flows. You are going to have doubts along the way. But the biggest thing when you've created this new identity is that you have a roadmap for what you need to do. You have a very set out, defined plan on the actions you need to take, because you've created this new identity of who you want to be. And you understand, what does that person do? What habits do they have? and what actions do they take. And then when you do have the down week and you do have those doubts, you can tell yourself, hey, this is who I am. And then you can just get back to doing what you need to do in order to make that change in a positive direction. And then over time, over a 6-month, 12-month, 18-month, 3-year, 5-year period, as you step into this new reality, you just become this new person. You are the person who works out. You are the person who gets 8 hours of sleep a night. You are the person who is patient with your children, who doesn't blow their top every time they do something wrong. Like, you are this new person because you have done the work in order to get there, and you are confident in that new reality. But a lot of that sometimes starts right back at the start with having you identify as that person. Rather than, I am trying to do this, you become that, I am this. And that can help you in the early stages stay on path, really get done the work that you need to do, and move everything in a very, very positive direction. And within that, another thing that you can really look at doing, and this I think is an important thing to look at too, is surrounding yourself with people who are the type of person that you want to be. Because if you are able to join groups where the desired behavior that you want is the normal behavior, then it makes things easier for you because you start to rise to the same level as everyone else in that group. And yes, there are some cliche sayings out there about you are the sum of the 5 people that you hang around the most. And I do believe that to be true. I know whenever I've tried to make a habit change or done something, when I've got myself around other people, and it doesn't even have to be that we have such good access to each other, where it can be things as simple as like listening to a podcast from that person every day. Now, it is not as good as being able to have a conversation about them, especially if you're struggling with overcoming certain adversity. But consuming that, we have more access to people than ever before in human history. So it is a lot easier to actually surround yourself with the type of people that you want to become. And that as well is part of the new identity that is trying to be created. My friends have these traits. Now, we can never control what other people do, but by surrounding ourselves with those people, it can help us become this new person that we want to. And that doesn't mean you have to let go of all your old friends or your family or anything like that. Sometimes that may be a necessary step to take. However, you don't need to always go down that path. You don't need to jettison everybody who's not going to get you to the end goal. You don't have to be like that, because that can be a concern for some people as well too. But understanding that if we need to step into a new reality, if we need to step into a new state of being or a new level in our life, that investing in ourselves and being around people where the desired behavior that I want is their normal behavior is going to help me level up. That is part of creating that new identity for yourself, which can in turn help change those habits and move the needle forward so that you can achieve the goals that you want to be and you can become the person that you want to be. And that's the whole premise of the podcast. If you have been struggling for change, have a think about that self-talk, how you've been articulating it, that to yourself and others around you. Maybe it's something as simple as working out. Oh, I'm trying to work out more. Are you trying, or are we doing? Because that simple shift in the way we articulate that can actually make a big difference to how easy it is for us to stay on track long term and get back to the person we want to become when things get tough. So exercise that you can potentially do, sit down and have a think about creating this new identity for yourself. Who do you want to be? Where do you want to be in your life? Where do you want to be with your health? And that person that you want to become, what habits do they have and what do they do? And then once you have that blueprint for yourself, You need to start doing those habits because, again, this is not the secret where if you say it, it's going to happen. You still have to do the work. But sometimes just telling ourselves that we are rather than we're trying can be that shift that we need in order to make ourselves, propel ourselves on the path that we want to become. That's it for this week. I appreciate you joining me again for another week. Hopefully you got some value out of what I covered off. If you want to follow along, we have a Instagram page at The Unstoppable Dad, Facebook page, The Unstoppable Dad Project. We have a we have a Facebook group there that is free for you to jump into. We get notified about new episodes when they drop, and also there's a whole bunch of other free resources in there that you'll be able to gain access to. If you would like to talk to me about any of the paid programs that I offer, so whether it is help with training, whether it is help with any of your goals as it pertains to your overall health and well-being, there is a link in the show notes where you can book in a free coaching call with myself. I only give away 5 of them a month, so if you would like to jump on and have one of those, it is not a sales call, it is an actual coaching call where I will unpack some of the things that I spoke about today around you trying to create a new identity for yourself so that you can step into this new reality and level up. So thanks again for listening. I appreciate your time, and I'll see you next week. Goodbye.